Hi, I'm Chris Clark with LandElevator.com, and in this video we're going to talk about conducting your research on vacant land before you buy it. Now there's a number of things to consider, from the zoning of the property to legal access to title, and we're going to talk about all of them. So let's dive in. The first topic we'll talk about is zoning. Now the zoning of the property predicates what can and can't be built on the property. And the purpose of zoning is really to create synergy among communities and among neighborhoods. You wouldn't want a recycling center being built next to your single family home. That wouldn't be very synergistic, and that's what zoning helps with. So there's three primary types of zoning. There's agricultural, there's residential, and there's commercial. So with agricultural, just think growing something on the property, crops or food or something like that. Could also be raising animals. With residential, think about someplace that you're going to live, so building a home, something like that. And then with commercial, think about businesses. Think about a retail space, a shopping center, an industrial warehouse, things like that. But primarily with zoning, you're going to want to make sure that when you're buying the property or before you buy the property that you can build what it is that you want to build on the property, and what you want to do with the property is allowed. And we get a lot of people that want to come in and build something that's a little bit more alternative, like an earthship or a tiny home. Some places are okay with that, some places aren't. But by all means, check the zoning first to make sure that you can do what you want to do on the property before you buy it. The next topic we'll talk about is utilities. And when we're talking about utilities, we're talking about water, talking about sewer and septic, and electricity and gas. And when you're in the city, you pretty much have access to all of these public utilities. It's very, very simple. You build your house, you just tie into all of the public utilities. However, when you're in a more rural area, the public utilities sometimes can be available and sometimes they're not. It just depends. But there's much more common ways in a rural area to get utilities than there is in like a city environment, a metropolitan area. So first one we'll talk about here is water. With water, if you're in a city, you're probably just going to tie into the public water system. However, with rural areas, the more common ways are to either drill a well, and with a well, you'll have a well installation company come out. They'll drill down to the water table, and then they'll install a well pump, and it'll pump the water into your house. The next way that's very common in rural areas is to install holding tanks and have water delivered. So you'll get a couple 500-gallon or 1,000-gallon holding tanks, and as you need, you'll have a company come out and they'll fill up the holding tanks, and you can have a pump system that pumps the water right into your house. And there's other alternative ways too. These days you can do rainwater collection if it's allowed in the area, and if there's enough rainfall, that could help. There's water makers out there. There's water purification systems. If you can gather the water from a nearby river or stream and you've got the rights to do so. So lots of ways to get water, but the common ways are either going with the public utility system or the public water system, I should say, or getting a well installed or the water holding tanks. So the next utility is sewer. So sewer or septic. If you're in a city, you'll tie into the public sewer system. If you're not in a city, you're probably going to go with a septic system. It just depends on whether or not sewer is available and whether or not it's more viable to go with sewer versus septic. So next thing to consider when we're talking about utilities is electricity. With electricity, again, if you're in the city, you're just going to connect to the public electric grid. And if you're not in the city, most likely you'll do a solar setup. So you'll install some solar panels on the roof or a solar panel somewhere on the property, and you'll get solar power. Now, even in cities these days, solar is becoming very, very common. So it depends on which route you want to go. There's other alternative systems as well, like wind generators. And oftentimes, if you're doing something alternative and you're not going to connect to the grid at all, you'll do a little gas generator backup. Last thing would be gas or propane. So again, if you're in the city, you're going to just tie to public gas. But if you're not in the city and there's no public gas available, then you'll get one of those propane tanks and have that filled from time to time as needed. So that pretty much covers utilities. And the next topic we'll talk about is surveys. Now, with vacant land, you don't really need to get a survey. There's all sorts of surveys that you could dip in and get if you wanted to. It depends on what you're going to use the property for, but the most common type of survey to get if you want to do it is a boundary line survey where you're going to determine where the property lines of this property are. So that way you know if you're going to build on the property, you're going to build within the property lines. Now, these days you've got county GIS websites that are very helpful. They're not always dead accurate, but they're very close. So if you've got a 5-acre parcel and you're going to build in the middle of the property, you don't really need to do a survey if you don't want to. It's always recommended anyway. However, if you're going to be building something right against the property line, and like the home is going to go right up against the property line, or you're going to build a fence right along the property line, it would make sense to get a survey done for the property first and know exactly where those property lines exist. So the next thing when we're talking about research is title research. And when you're looking into the title of property, you're really looking for 3 main things. You're looking for chain of title. Are there any liens? Are there any encumbrances? Chain of title on a property is showing the ownership history. You're going to want to make sure that as the property was changing hands from one owner to the next, there's no breaks in the chain of title, they call it. So the property transferred from owner A to owner B to owner C to owner D. If you saw that the property went from owner A to owner C to owner D and there was no B, then you're going to want to research that and make sure that you can account for that break in the chain of title. With liens, liens are essentially a monetary interest in a property by a third party. And with encumbrances, they're kind of like a broader version of a lien. They can be monetary or non-monetary. But do your title research before you buy the property. If you're working with a title company, they'll do it for you, or you can do it on your own. It totally depends. So do your title research, make sure that you've got clear title and there's no money owed or anything like that, and you'll be good to go. And the next thing we'll talk about here is access. So there's 2 types of access that you want to look for. There's legal access and then there's physical access. And legal access means that there's a legal right of way to get to the property, and that can be, that's really something that the subdivider originally will put into the property. Most likely there's a road going to the property. And then the other one is physical access. Sometimes there's legal access, but there's no physical access. So is there an actual road or a way to get to the property? And look for both. It's not necessarily that you need both. You can buy a property that has legal access, but it doesn't have physical access, and maybe you just need to bulldoze a road in. Or you can buy a property that has no legal access, but it has physical access, and you can use that physical access if there's no neighbors around for a long period of time, and maybe you can get the legal access built in later. So lots of stuff to research, from, like we talked about, zoning to access to clear title. And if you have any questions, we're always here to help. You can reach out to us at sales@landelevated.com. If you like this video, we'd love to hear more information. So click the subscribe button, comment below, and we're able to answer any questions in the comments. Also, you can check out our website at www.landelevated.com for more helpful information like this. And thanks for watching. See you in the next video.